block of lightning presentations. So our last block of lightning presentations for this conference. Our first presenter is Samantha Siyambalapitiya from Griffith University, who will be presenting on behalf of Huang on talking about speech pathologists and professional interpreters managing culturally and linguistically diverse adults with acquired communication disorders, a systematic review.
Thank you for saying that title for me, so I don't have to say it. So the reason that I'm here and not Anne is that Anne is due to deliver a baby any second now. I texted her this morning and she said it hasn't come yet, but she thinks she's feeling something that might be like contractions. So yes, this is the first paper from Anne's PhD, and yes, you've heard the title, and this is a systematic review covering this topic. That's Anne's Twitter handle, so please feel free to tag her on any tweets because I'm sure she'd be interested to know your thoughts. So, as many of us know, Australia is one of the most multicultural societies in the world. 1 in 5 people speak a language other than English, and there are more than 300 languages spoken in the country. So this means, we have a predominantly English-speaking workforce, and that means that we'll often have to work with professional interpreters in order to provide services to people who speak languages other than English. So there are many policies and guidelines across Australia that actually state the legal and ethical rights of people who speak languages other than English to have an interpreter involved in their healthcare. And yet we actually know very little about how speech pathologists and interpreters should be working together. And so that was the aim of this review, to explore that more and find out the context of interprofessional practice between these two professions when they're working with CALD adults who have acquired communication disorders such as aphasia, to identify the challenges and strategies that have been reported, and to find out what areas we should be researching in the future. So Anne used the method outlined by Pickering and Byrne, the systematic quantitative literature review. She initially identified 1,397 records through searching 5 databases and hand searching. And ultimately, after the screening process, there were 10 papers identified for inclusion in the review. So you can see there that we were looking for studies that informed our understanding of how the two professions work together, that were focusing on the management of acquired communication disorders, including aphasia. There's been more literature relating to paediatric caseloads, but not much in this area. And looking at adults who were from diverse backgrounds. I'm obviously not expecting you to read that spreadsheet, but more just to illustrate that she extracted a lot of detailed data across the areas of study characteristics, context of the interpreting interaction, and challenges and strategies. So 5 of these 10 studies were conducted in Australia. The research also came from the US and from Norway and from New Zealand. And all of the studies were either surveys or single case designs. So the majority of participants in research to date have been monolingual female speech pathologists, and where interpreter participants have been involved, they've been mainly involved in assessment tasks using face-to-face service delivery. So this is just, this is not an exhaustive list, this is just some of the key challenges and strategies that were reported. So the number 1 challenge reported is speech pathologists being unsure about the accuracy of interpretations. Secondly, a lack of clarity about the roles of both speech pathologists and interpreters, so being uncertain about what each of them do, and difficulties actually accessing professional interpreters. The number 1 strategy reported was pre-session briefing, so meeting with the interpreter and saying, this is what I do as a speech pathologist, this is what an assessment looks like, here are some errors that people with aphasia make. And then the second one was training for both speech pathologists and interpreters. That was identified as being a need. And working from written materials. So, in conclusion, we've had very limited research to date that's actually looked at how speech pathologists and interpreters work together to treat adults who have acquired communication disorder who are from culturally diverse backgrounds. So far, the perspectives predominantly represent speech pathology perspectives, and although there are some strategies that have been identified, we don't really know if they work in a clinical setting. In the future, we need to hear more detailed perspectives from both professions, and this is what Anne has started to do. So she's interviewed interpreters and we've also interviewed speech pathologists, and so we're exploring this further. And in the long term, we want to find out which of these strategies can we actually implement in very busy clinical settings where you're already trying to do lots of other things. So if you'd like to contact Anne, that's her email address, and please feel free to contact us via email or Twitter. 20 seconds to go.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Our next presenter is Zizi Diong from the